To first class on regional development and planning. When we look into the syllabus of UPSC, paper 1, part B, the first point is related to the concept of a region. And the types of region, we have to know the methods of regionalization. Then we have to, the third point is related to the growth centers. We have certain places which attracts the growth and they are growth centers, growth poles. When there is growth poles, when a region is having complete economic prosperity, there is regional imbalance which is created at the neighboring regions. So the fourth topic deals with regional imbalances. Then we need to have a development strategy to eliminate these regional imbalances. The sixth topic is with respect to environmental issues, and the seventh is sustainable development. Now, first, let us look into the concept of region. Region clearly means area. So, what does region mean? Region is nothing but an area. This area has certain characteristics. This area should be clearly demarcated. Clearly demarcated area. So, a clearly demarcated area is called as the areal unit. It is clearly defined. When it is clearly defined, it is going to have location and it also has hierarchy. For example, hierarchy in the sense the order of arrangement. It has an order. We have nation, that is country. Then we go for the states, districts. So when we look at a certain district, we have to tell that this district is located at this state, right? When we look at a specific metropolitan area, we have to mention that it is located at a particular state and this state is at a particular nation. So hierarchy, an area must have hierarchy. Apart from this, let us consider our home. So our home is being clearly differentiated from other regions of the city, right? We have records for our home. We have a clear differentiation of our land which belongs to us with respect to other lands in the neighboring area. Therefore, we can say that the fourth property of a area is areal differentiation. It is clearly differentiated. So these are the 4 points which we have to remember when we are defining about a region. A region is an area which is clearly demarcated. So when it is clearly demarcated, we call it as an areal unit. It has a location, hierarchy, and it is areally differentiated. When we go for the second concept, we are just mentioning here the geographers or the terms related to region. Geographers or certain terms. Now, according to German school of thought, we have to go for the German school of thought. It mentions a term which is called as Landschaftskunde. Landschaftskunde means a landscape. Let us take any place. So this is a landscape. How does a landscape being differentiated? It has two properties. It is a aerial unit and it also has a mental constraint. So now we have to learn what is an aerial unit and what is a mental constraint. So in German school of thought, we have a concept called as Landschaftskunde. It means landscape. Landschaftskunde has 2 points. Aerial unit. It is an aerial unit. A landscape is an aerial unit. This aerial unit is physical. Physical in the sense it is having a definite boundary. It has geography, climate, the type of soil, all the physical properties. It is a physical unit. It belongs to physical reality. So it is a physical reality and it is objective. You can't go for subjective interpretation. It is as it is. Mental construct involves humans, right? So humans have certain mental maps related to the particular landscape. This mental map is a subjective. So according to German school of thought, we have Landschaftskunde, which means a landscape. This landscape has an aerial unit, which is physical and which is objective. And it also has a mental constraint where humans have certain mental map related to a particular landscape. So this mental map is subjective. So now, two geographers have mentioned about landscape. Pink is a geographer. He says that a landscape, when you consider a landscape, it does not include the study of man. Man, according to him, a landscape does not include man, the study of man. But Carl Osor says that man is an integral part. Man belongs to the region, and you cannot study region separately eliminating man. You need to study a region along with man because man makes certain changes in the region and it affects the region. For example, if he has cleared the entire forest in an area, it becomes deforested. So the climatic pattern are also changed in this region, right? So man is an integral part of the region, but Topping says that landscape does not include the study of man. Vidal de Lablache is also a geographer. He states that region. So this is definition for region. Vidal de Lablache has given definition for the region. A region is a domain. It is a domain where dissimilar beings are. Dissimilar beings in the sense various different kinds of forces, various organisms, plants, animals, humans, they are artificially brought. They do not naturally occur in this region. They are artificially brought together. They are brought together and they get adopted to common existence and they live together. Right. So it is a domain where we have artificial beings. We have to, dissimilar beings which are not related to each other. Dissimilar beings are brought together. They are artificially brought together. For example, due to wind, certain seeds are getting dispersed and they go from one region to another, right? So they are artificial, they are naturally brought, but artificially in the sense they do not belong to that region. So they are artificially brought to there and they go for a common existence. They adopt to that region, they have certain adaptations and they exist together. Common existence. Right. The next geographer who describes about a region is R.S. Platt. R.S. Platt speaks about general homogeneity. There needs to be a homogeneity in the sense it needs to have certain common characteristics where, for example, the climate of this entire region is same whereas the neighboring region is different, so they have homogeneity with respect to climate, soil type, etc. They have certain basic homogeneity of land. The land is having certain homogeneity of the land character and occupants. So we need to remember these four geographers what they have commented on regarding the region, and we should also know the term known as landschaft or landschaft kunde, right? Landschaft kunde means a landscape is having an aerial unit and it is also having a mental constraint. Pink tells that landscape does not include the study of man, whereas Carl Osor says that man is an integral part of a region. When we go for Vidal de Lablache, she says that it is a domain where we say that dissimilar beings, totally those are not related to each other, they are artificially brought together and they adopt to a common existence. R.S. Platt says that it is having homogeneity. Now we are introduced to a term called homogeneity, similarity of the land character and even the occupants. Right. Now we have to see types of lands. This is the first topic, and first topic has been completed regarding a region and then a general definitions of region, which is given by certain geographers. Now, the next topic is related to the types of regions. When we are studying about the types of region, there are three types. It is homogeneous, it is heterogeneous, and third one is planning region. Planning region means for certain administrative convenience, you have planned a region. Now, let us see what is a homogeneous region. Already, from various geographers, we came to know that a region has two types of influences. One is the physical unit of a region and then the human unit of a region. So, with respect to homogeneous, there is a clear boundary. Either it is having a clear physical boundary or it is having a human boundary. Right? Physical or human characteristic is making a clear boundary. For example, this particular region has people who speak certain language in common. They are in majority. Or this particular area has water. So physical feature homogeneity, physical characteristic homogeneity. This is a human characteristic homogeneity. It must have a clear boundary with respect to the physical and human characteristics. You can clearly differentiate it, right? So homogeneity with respect to you can write the physical characteristics in a broad terms: topography, rainfall, and climate. So how do you define it? It has a clear boundary. So what is the opposite for heterogeneous? It is not having a clear boundary. So crossing the boundary. A specific characteristic, the physical or a human characteristic, is crossing the boundary. It does not cross the boundary in terms of homogeneous. Homogeneous means a physical or a human characteristic which has a clear boundary. Heterogeneous means it just crosses the boundary. Okay. So, what are the other terms which are used to mention homogeneous? I'm sorry, heterogeneous. Heterogeneous can be also defined as polarized, nodal, or functional. Okay, so one function that is crossing the political boundary, the one function which is crossing the boundary, one characteristic which is crossing the boundary, right? For example, we have a city. The influence of the city is present in the neighboring areas. So it continues to grow beyond this administrative limit of the city to the neighboring areas. When the features of the city, there are certain features of the city, the neighboring areas also start get influenced by the city and they develop the characteristics of the city even though they were previously a rural areas. So when city is outgrowing, we call it as the rural urban fringe. This rural urban fringe has the characteristics of a city, right? So the influence of the city in its neighboring area is the example for this. What is the example? So this is the example for heterogeneous. Crossing the boundary. The font function is crossing the boundary. It is also known as polarized, nodal, or functional, right? Let us see example for heterogeneous region. We need to draw this diagram as an example for heterogeneous region. This is a city and this is the central business district. So this is the place where major economic activities of the city is being done and this is the administrative limit of the city. Okay. From here 1 to 2 we are going to the second. This is called a city region. Why do we call a city region? Is certain areas develop. These areas are linked to the central business district with backward and forward linkages, right? So these areas are linked to these districts, central business district. So we call it as a city as a region. This city has influence over certain areas. These areas are within the administrative limit of the city. Therefore, we call it as a city region. Now we call it, it is going to another stage. This is stage 3, right? This is the central business district. And This is the same administrative limit. I have just drawn it in a bigger expanded size, right? This is called as the monocentric. It is having a single center which attracts other cities or other regions also, right? So we call it as a monocentric mega city. The boundary of the city is being expanded. It has consumed the neighboring regions. This city has consumed the neighboring regions, and the boundary of the city has just expanded in this diagram. The reason for that is the neighboring areas of the city might be rural areas, but they have been influenced by the city, and therefore they, over the period of time, develop the same characteristics of the city. Therefore, we call it as a mega city. This circle is a diagram of a mega city, right? We call it as a mega city. Now, this megacity has certain regions within itself, which is attracted to which is having linkages to the central business district. Now, we have neighboring areas which are converted into a city. Now, this is a city as a region, city region. This might be a city with a single central business district. So, this is again a city with the areas within it which are having linkages to the CBD. So we call this as a city region, right? Now, when we see the CBD in itself has also increased, we have more regions within itself which are having linkages with the CBD. Here too, we have regions. Then these cities, in turn, they start attracting neighboring regions. So they attract the neighboring regions, right? This is how the growth of the city influences its neighboring region. Therefore, its function crosses beyond the administrative limit. It functions crosses beyond its physical or human characteristics, and it attracts neighboring regions, right? This is why we call it as a heterogeneous region. Now, this is monocentric city region. Now we have two cities which are more or less same characteristic, right? Therefore, we call it as a polycentric. It is called as a polycentric megacity region. Now, even this megacity grows further, right? Now, here is a diagram for megacity. This is a megacity. The CBD has grown almost to the administrative limit of the city. This city in itself is very big, and the CBD of the city has grown much bigger in size, almost consuming 95% of the city in itself, right? Now, from here, we have only one center is there, monocentric. It is a megacity. When it is having certain regions, we call it as a super megacity. Super megacity region, MCR. This is polycentric super megacity region, right? It has few inner areas which are attracted to the CBD. Now, the third type of classification of a region. The first type is homogeneous. The second is hetero. It is having uniformity with a region is having uniformity with respect to the physical or human characteristic is what we call homogeneous. Heterogeneous, it crosses its functions beyond its administrate beyond its landscape, right? The function has been crossed beyond its landscape is heterogeneous. The third one is planning. Planning regions. We plan those regions for our administrative convenience. Right. Such a regions are called as planning regions. Planning regions is also called as a political region. or administrative region, right? A segment of a territory. Why do we administration, even though we define administration? This is a segment, and this segment is best for economic decisions to apply. This segment is chosen with a criteria. Economic decisions best apply in this segment. Okay, now we have a geographer called as Baldwin. He states that this is an area which displays a unit of economic decisions. When we take economic decisions at this unit, it applies best for the entire region. Whereas if it is a larger area, when economic decisions are taken at this place, the effects are not distributed equally among all the places of that region, right? So Boldivile is a geographer. He defines that it is an area where it displays a unit of economic decisions. We also have another geographer called as Klassen. He defines that a region large enough to take investment decisions. Investment decisions, we have our own industry. So when you are going for investment, you do industry, and labor, necessary labor are available at this region, and it is having homogeneous economic structure and at least one growth point. Now we are introduced to another term, a growth point. It is having a growth point. So what does Boldivile defines this as an area which is a unit of economic decision. Klassen defines it as an area, a region which is large enough to take its own investment decision. It is having its own industry, labor, and it also has a homogeneous economic structure and at least one growth point. We can have a common approach to this entire region. Common approach to this entire region. The planning area has a common approach, and it has awareness of its problems, and it is useful for reducing regional disparity. Whenever we speak about regional disparity, we have to use planning region, which is essential when we take an administrative unit which has maximum economic benefits. It is a segment of economic decisions to apply, and it is an area unit of economic decisions, which is defined by Boldivile. And Klassen also defines it as an investment decision, an area where investment decision, own industry, labor, it is an economic structure, homogeneous economic structure, and at least one growth point. It has a common approach, and these things are done to reduce homogeneity. We have multi-level planning. At the first stage, we have the national level, and in the second stage, we have state level, districts. Beyond district, we have even blocks, villages, right? Village level. This is multi-level planning. We have certain plans throughout India also, and state-specific plan, district-specific plan. Even the blocks, villages are having certain functions to be performed with respect to economy. This is an example of multi-level planning. So this is the diagram which you draw for multi-level planning. Now, the next topic which we are going to enter is principles of planning. Whenever we plan a region, what are the main things we have to keep in mind? Is what we call it as a principles of regional planning. So we have seven principles and they can be easily understood. The first is vertical, vertical unity. The second is horizontal spatial unity. Vertical, horizontal, this is space, right? Vertical unity, horizontal unity, both combined together is space, right? So principle of space time continuum. That is space and time goes together. The second is comprehensive development. Community development. Sixth one is related to there is an equilibrium between social desirability. You want something, but it also needs to be economically viable. Social desirability and economic viability. And the last principle is ecological equilibrium. We say related to sustainable development, right? We have ecological equilibrium. So these are the principles. First is vertical, the second is horizontally. We have to see about a region. So vertical unity, horizontal unity. Vertical and horizontal combined together is what we call it as a space. And this region has certain changes with respect to time. So space, time, continuum. Comprehensive development. You take a particular region and you develop it. You include all the factors to be developed proportionally. Then you take a particular community over that region and you develop that community. Then there is a equilibrium. We need to have a balance between social desirability and economic viability. The seventh principle is related to the ecology where you have to go for sustainability. These are the principles. Now let us see them one by one. Let us see the first principle. The first principle is the principle of vertical unity. Vertical unity, when we talk about a region, is present, right? All the phenomena, all the activity in the region, so all the phenomena operating in the vertical space, you have to consider the vertical space of the region, which is operating, all the phenomena which is operating in the vertical space. You have to take the specific vertical space. They are fully integrated and interrelated with each other. So we have all the actions which are taking place in this vertical space are integrated, they are interrelated to each other. Right. Now let us see what is a vertical space. First we have lithosphere, right? Then we have atmosphere. Lithosphere, atmosphere, even you can include hydrosphere because that particular region will have certain water bodies and physical space, human space, economic space. These are the various dimensions related to a vertical space. We have lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, physical space. This is a real physical space, right? Then we have human space and economic space. We can also include political space also. These are the dimensions of vertical space. So all the phenomena of the vertical space, they operate in an integrated and interrelated manner with respect to each other. This is what we call vertical unity. We know what are the phenomena which is operating in the vertical unity. It is lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere, physical space, human space, economic space, political space. Right. Now, the next principle is related to the principle of horizontal spatial unity. So let us understand this as a country. This country has various states. These states in itself are having various regions, right? Various districts. Let us assume these are the districts of the state. This in entire is a country. Okay. Now, how do we define a horizontal unity? Horizontal unity is defined as a region. A region is having sub-region, right? We have a region. The region is having a sub-region. Now, a region along with the sub-region are working together. This is in case of planning. Okay, they work together in case of planning. Therefore, you cannot isolate any region. No region could be isolated for the plan from the planning of adjacent region. Right. Now, if you take a city, this city has influence in its surrounding regions. Therefore, we call it as a city region, right? So, planning for a city region, you have to plan not only for the city and its administrative territory, but you have to plan for the city region. This is what horizontal unity talks about. We have a region, it has certain sub-regions. Inside those sub-regions also, we have again certain regions which are classified within the sub-region. So when we are planning, we need to work together in case of planning, and we cannot isolate a specific region from its neighboring region. So when you can have a common plan for these two regions. Okay. Similarly, you can have a common plan for these two sub-regions and these two sub-regions. So you cannot have one thing completely isolated. It might be interrelated, it might be linked to its neighboring region in case of planning. So when we define vertical unity, we told that all the phenomena which is operating in a vertical unity, they are interlinked and interrelated to each other, integrated to each other, right? Horizontal unity defines about a region which has a sub-region and they work together in case of planning. There is no isolation of a specific region. Example is a city as a region. City as a region. When you are planning, you plan for the city region, not for the city alone, right? Now, the next principle is space-time continuum, the principle of space-time continuum. Space-time continuum is very easy. When we are when we are planning for a region, you need to consider time. We need to take time also. This is what time, space-time continuum. You can use this diagram for space-time continuum as an example for the space-time continuum, right? Of heterogeneous, you can also use this diagram for space-time continuum. Let's say this is in 1950s, 1990s, 2020. This is future 2027. Okay, you have to write this. How the city grows from city region, mega city. So you have to consider in 1990s the total fertility rate, a migration rate, administrative area, the administrative limits. You need to consider these points and you have to plan for the future. You have to bring policies for the future. Otherwise, the city would die because the resources of the city might be exhausted. Right? Now the city is megapolis. It is in megapolis. But the city will die. Die is what we call it as a necropolis, is the dying stage of the city where the resources are completely exhausted, the city is overcrowded, you have reverse migrations from that city, right? So from megapolis, the next thing is necropolis. You need to stop necropolis. You need to stop dying of the city. You need to prevent control pollution in that city, right? So we need certain data, the total fertility rate of that particular city, the migration rate, administrative units. You need to create counter magnets. Counter magnets are adjacent areas which attract migration from this city. So people do not get migrated to this place. Instead, they go to the place region B. They don't go to A from a rural village. This is what we call it as a counter magnets, right? This is an example of the space-time continuum. So we wrote planning a region with respect to time. considering time as a factor is what we call it as a principle of space-time continuum, right? And we also saw an example. Now, in that example, I have mentioned a term called as counter magnet. I need to add a point regarding this counter magnet. These counter magnets are not successful in general because a city has a lot of economic prospects, right? It has central business district which is growing continuously. Whereas the counter magnet is not successful because it lacks economic prospect as compared to the main urban center. It lacks economic prospects as compared to the main urban center. So this is the drawback of counter magnet. The next principle is comprehensive development. Comprehensive development means that all the sectors, we have various sectors which is present in a city or a region. This city might consist of only secondary and tertiary activities. Secondary and tertiary sectors, right? So both the sectors, or it can also have a research center, quaternary. All the sectors which is present within the region must develop. So all the sectors, and we have different kinds of people based on the social stratification or based on the economic stratification, right, in a particular region. So all the segments must have development. All the sectors and all the segments must have equitable development, right? Now we need to create strong forward and backward linkages with one another so that there is no regional disparity. The forward and backward linkages are established to reduce regional disparity. So, all the sectors in comprehensive development, all the sectors and all the segments must develop equitably, and forward and backward linkages with one another should be established to reduce the regional disparity. Now, the next principle is principle of community development. We are always given choices, but we are not provided opportunity. In the principle of community development, we are focusing on the segments, right? We are not focusing on the sector, we are focusing on segments. This is what we call it as a principle of community development. We are provided choices, but we are not provided adequate opportunity to utilize these choices. What does community development says about? It says about the equal opportunity for all. This is what principle of community development. Now we are going for the principle of equilibrium between social desirability and economic viability. Let us consider region A and region B. Okay, region A is densely populated. Region B is sparsely populated. So members of the region A, they want a mall, they want college to be established here. Here, they have the right? This is what we call it as social disparity, establishment of infrastructure. Members of the region B also wants a mall and an educational institute, but they are very sparsely populated. Not even 100 people per square kilometer is present. But here we have 1,000 people per square kilometer. Now, economically, when we are going for this project is viable because it is economically profitable. But here, when you are establishing an infrastructure related to mall, you will have less number of people who serve as customers for that infrastructure. Therefore, we need to have a balance between social desirability and economic viability. These two regions are very near, just 10 kilometers away from each other. So the people from here can travel here to utilize this small infrastructure. And if it is lesser kilometer, five, let's say it's 5 kilometer, they can use the educational institute which is present here. Therefore, it is economically viable. This is what we say, that there needs to be a balance between social desirability and economic viability. This is the state of Himachal Pradesh. Okay. In Himachal Pradesh, the Hamirpur district is densely populated, whereas Lahore and Spiti district is sparsely populated, right? So services must be socially desirable as well as economically viable. We can use this as an example. Low population density with respect to low population density and high population density, right? Now, the principle of ecological equilibrium. Whenever we are planning a region, we have to notice 3 points: social desirability, economic viability, and ecological sustainability of a region. These 3 points must be the key pillars for planning a region. So, we shall go for a recap of what we have studied in this video. We saw what is a region. So, the characteristics of a region are: it is having a clear demarcated area, location, hierarchy, areal differentiation. The German school of thought has mentioned a term called as Landschaftskunde, which means an landscape which is having two characteristics. The first one is an aerial unit, which is physical or objective, and the second one is a mental constraint, which is a mental map and it is subjective. Pink tells that a landscape does not include the study of man, whereas we have Carl Osor, he says that man is an integral part of the landscape. We have Vidal de Lablache, he mentions about a region. He states that it is a domain where we have dissimilar beings, they come artificially, they are brought artificially, and they adopt to a common existence. R.S. Platt mentions homogeneity. There is homogeneity of the land, character, and occupants. Now, for types of regions, we have homogeneous regions. They have clear boundary, heterogeneous regions, cross the boundary, planning regions. With respect to planning regions, we say economic desirability of that region, right? This is an example which can be used for both time space continuum and heterogeneous planning. Planning region, which is for administrator, a segment which is economically viable. Economic decisions apply to this segment. Volji White is again a geographer who mentions that it is an unit of economic decision. Klassen is a geographer who mentions that this area is for if this area is for investment decision, it should have a known industry, labor, and at least one growth point. This planning region is divided on the basis of a common approach for that entire region, and regional disparity should be eliminated. This is the goal of planning region. We have an example for multi-level planning: national, state, district, block, and village. Next, we go for the principles of planning. We have vertical unity, horizontal spatial unity, time space continuum, comprehensive development, sector plus segment. Community development is for equal opportunity. Equilibrium between social desirability and economic viability, ecological equilibrium.